Right, take your time. It's 11 minutes past 6. A very good morning to you, and thanks for joining us this morning on a fresh edition of Newspaper Headlines on Metro 97.7 FM. You know what we do on Newspaper Headlines? We review headline stories captured in different newspapers, and then we take your thoughts, your reactions. What do you think about the headline stories captured in the papers? We'll get to look at all of that from now till 7 o'clock. And not forgetting, we have insight analysis. Yeah, and very insightful analysis this morning. We do it every Monday with Barrister Adeyemi Ibironke, and he's in the studio with us this morning to tell us what he thinks about the different newspapers. Barrister, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning to all our listeners, and thanks for having me.
Okay, from now till 7 o'clock, we'll be seeing headline stories captured in the papers. And we'll have to get your thoughts. The number to send your messages to 0916 257 1214. That's 0916 257 1214. You can also send an SMS to 0901 133 9791. That's 0901 133 9791. That's the number to send your messages to. Not forgetting, we're also on Facebook, facebook.com/Metro977 Live. That's our Facebook page. You can see the headline stories on Facebook already. Just drop your reactions in the comments section. Remember, keep your comments civil and straight to the point. Newspaper headlines on Metro 97.7 FM. Welcome aboard. My name is Ahmed Olalekan, and producing this morning is my producer, Adeola Tosin. We'll take a breather, and we'll be back to see headline stories in The Guardian. We have The Punch, The Vanguard, The Daily Post, The Sun, and The Nation newspapers. So stay tuned. It should sound better now.
Okay. Let's have it down small. Now, just my long legs be the walla.
Sir?
Isn't that my long legs?
Okay. That still captures it. All right, let's jump straight into the papers and see what they have for us this morning. What exactly is happening in Nigeria and across different parts of the world? Let's see these things as captured in the different newspapers. We'll kickstart with the Guardian newspaper this morning, Monday, 25th August, 2025. The Guardian has these headline stories. Malema, Africa's future dependent on political economy in Nigeria and South Africa. That's about a headline here on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. You can see details on page 6. And the coalition, ADC, warned of looming security collapse. Urge Tinubu to act. Coalition to sustain school feeding program. 1 trillion naira needed yearly to sustain school feeding program. You can see that story inside the Vanguard newspaper. We have it on the front page of the Vanguard this Monday morning. And the more stories on the front page. NNPCL deducts 235.6 billion naira in 7 months for oil search in North Frontier basins. The headline says NNPCL deducts 235.6 billion naira in 7 months for oil search in North Frontier basins. Now, front page stories in the Guardian newspaper. And the Yoruba elders appeal to Oni Alaafin to end rift. You can see that story here in the Guardian newspaper. NMA Lagos threatens solidarity strike over unpaid salaries, welfare. Benue Speaker resigns 48 hours after suspending 4 lawmakers. Still on the front page of the Guardian newspaper, RMAFC under fire over upward review of politicians' remuneration. Well, this story I know will interest a lot of Nigerians, so you can get a copy of the Guardian newspaper to read details inside this morning. RMAFC under fire for upward review of politicians' remuneration. And just below the masthead of the Guardian newspaper this morning, U.S. Obasanjo flagged judiciary over perceived graft. U.S. Obasanjo flagged judiciary over perceived graft. El Rufai, opposition leaders collapse. Collapse can mean, does it mean the ADC is getting stronger? Well, get a copy of the Guardian newspaper to read details of the story. And beside that story this morning, NLNG sales pact with gas suppliers to aid production expansion. These are stories on the front page of the Guardian newspaper. Front page stories. Let's see some of the inside stories in the Guardian newspaper. For the story, U.S. Obasanjo flagged judiciary over perceived graft. The story has two writers. Lawmakers, or lawyers rather, lawyers kick caution against branding entire system as corrupt. And the judiciary is biggest threat to INEC, says IPAC ex-chairman Ahmed. These are the writers to that headline story. And RFI, opposition leaders collapse Kaduna SDP into ADC. That story comes with three writers. Southwest APC dismisses ADC's coalition as mere distraction. And ADC denies Bala's resignation. Labels document fake, malicious. And the third writer reads, APC urges INEC security agencies to reject forged documents. And for the story, Yoruba group urges Nigerians to brace up for more economic hardship. You can see that story on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. Yoruba group urges Nigerians to brace up for more economic hardship. The story has three writers. Says president lacks capacity to rescue the economy. And the second writer says Atiku will be Kwankwaso unfit to defeat Tinubu. Jonathan Group insists. And the third writer reads, Obi is beautiful bride to 2027, says Tanko. These are writers to the story. Yoruba Group urges Nigerians to brace up for more economic hardship. And the Dangote Cement reappraises 1,500 drivers. You can see that story here inside the Guardian newspaper. If you're just joining us, you're listening to newspaper headlines on Metro 97.7 FM. We're seeing headline stories captured in all the papers this morning. And remember, without your reactions, newspaper headlines is incomplete. So we'd love to know what you think about the headline stories captured in the papers. A few more inside stories in the Punch before we take a leave. Obasanjo, Abdulsalami, others. And let's see some stories now in the Punch newspaper. The Punch has these stories. Okay, Kanu manufacturers to dump discos for NDPHC power. Kanu manufacturers to dump discos for NDPHC power. That's the beauty of the law in the power sector. Confiscated undeclared cash. Confiscated undeclared cash at airport hits $2.2 million. This is according to a report. Undeclared. Well, you can read that story up inside the Punch newspaper. And more stories. Julius Berger resumes work on Abuja Centenary City after 11 years. Yoruba leaders push for Makinde Adeleke intervention in Alaafin Oni conflict. You can see that story also inside the Punch newspaper. Sick and stranded. Presidential order fails to curb soaring drug prices. Sick and stranded. Presidential order fails to curb soaring drug prices. That story is inside the Punch newspaper this morning. You can read details right there. Afrobasket. D-Tigers to return from Angola today. And pregnancy faking widow nabbed with cocaine in Lagos. Pregnancy faking widow nabbed with cocaine in Lagos. And beside that story, locals beg federal government as Osun Ondo Federal Road crumble. Locals beg federal government as Osun Ondo federal roads crumble. PDP neck gets zoning reports today amid convention crisis. That story is a story inside the Punch newspaper. You can get a copy to read details. And the federal government shuts 22 illegal tertiary institutions. Federal government shuts 22 illegal tertiary institutions. Well, wondering we still have cases of illegal tertiary institutions in the country. That story is inside the Punch newspaper. And a man arrested after girlfriend dies inside Oshun apartment. Island-based Nigerian faces trial after breaking neighbors' windows. 4 detained as 20-man robbery gang invades Bauchi homes. Sad story. You can see that story inside the Punch newspaper. And the police rescue 25-year-old KB kidnapped victim. 6 Abia kidnap suspects killed in gun duel with police. And residents lament as refuse takes over Lagos Community Road. Residents lament as refuse takes over Lagos Community Road. That story is a story worth looking at. It's inside the Punch newspaper this morning. And the SCN calls for due process in selection of next Awujale. Group advocates menstrual health inclusion in school curriculum. Army destroys 9 illegal refineries, arrests 69 suspects. And Gowon decries rising crime among youth. You can read that story up inside the Punch newspaper this morning. And alias Ally emerges Benue Assembly Speaker as Jado resigns. The politics playing out in Benue State. If you've been following that story, the resignation of the Speaker and everything happening in Benue State, you can get details of that story inside the Punch newspaper this morning. And the more stories in the Punch. ADC takes over Kaduna SDP, welcomes APC members in Sokoto State. Sultan urges NBA to tackle social injustice, cost of litigation. Sultan urges NBA to tackle social injustice, cost of litigation. The NBA, a number of NBA stories in the papers this morning. Of course, I believe the barrister will have to weigh in on some of the stories when it's time. And group endorses APC senator for Bauchi governorship. These are stories captured inside the Punch newspaper this morning. NMMA calls for 2025 entries. INEC starts physical voter registration as 5.9 million PVCs awaits collection. INEC starts physical voter registration as 5.9 million PVCs awaits collection. That story is inside the Punch newspaper. And CSOs demand Kano appointees suspension over alleged 7.5 billion naira fraud. These are stories captured inside the Punch newspaper this morning. And let's see stories in the Vanguard. ADC to Tinubu declares state of emergency in Katsina, Zamfara, over insecurity. APC to Tinubu declares state of emergency in Katsina, Zamfara, over insecurity. And Yuletide, 131% surge in airfares to southeast, south-south, sparks passengers' outcry. Yuletide, 131% surge in airfares to southeast, south-south, sparks passengers' outcry. I saw a part of that release earlier, late last week. I mean, 350,000 naira to 400,000 naira from this part of the country to the southeast and the south-south. Well, that story is captured inside the Vanguard newspaper this morning. You can get details in the Vanguard. Economy, declining manufacturing. Agri sectors threaten Nigeria's industrialization. And economy, poverty drives undergraduates to sell snacks, sweets in campuses. Operation Sweep pushes hoodlums to FCT suburbs. Residents lament raid. And they're still inside the Vanguard newspaper. NDLEA nabs widow using fake pregnancy to traffic cocaine. We saw that story in the Punch newspaper. You can see details also in the Vanguard this morning. 6 die, 3 missing in fresh Sokoto boat mishap. Sad story coming from Sokoto State again this morning. Let's now see stories captured inside the Daily Post newspaper. Remember, if you're just joining us, this is newspaper headlines on Metro 97.7 FM. We're seeing headline stories captured in all the papers, and I would love you to, be a part of this conversation. If you find any of these headline stories interesting, just go ahead and send a message. The WhatsApp number is 0916 257 1214. That's 0916 257 1214. You can also send a message to 0901 133 9791. Not forgetting, if you're sending from outside Nigeria, the number, the code, +234 916 257 1214. That's the WhatsApp number. And the +234 901 133 9791. That's for short messages for people listening online. All right, let's see a few headline stories in the Daily Post newspaper before we hand the mic over to our analyst, Barrister Adeyemi Birunke. Elder brother of ex-Benue Speaker Jado dies hours after his resignation. Alfred Ebega sworn in as new Benue Assembly Speaker. Refs query NERC over utilization of 59 billion naira metering fund. That story is inside the Daily Post newspaper. And Carrie Rice brings joy to Lagos with grand finale of World Jollof Fest. That story is also inside the Daily Post newspaper. Let's flash some headline stories in the Sun. PDP power game continues. It's a story on the front page of the Sun newspaper. And ASU begins nationwide protest tomorrow. Soaring drug cost push Nigerians to unsafe treatment. It's a troubling story here inside the Sun newspaper. Well, check your time now. It's 29 minutes past 6. We're seeing headline stories, seen stories in the Guardian, the Punch, the Vanguard, and the Sun newspapers. If you find any of these headline stories interesting, just go ahead and drop a reaction on all the platforms. On WhatsApp, 0916 257 1214. That's 0916 257 1214. That number is our WhatsApp number. You can also drop a message on Facebook, facebook.com/Metro977 Live. We have the headline stories on Facebook. Just drop your reactions in the comment section. Let's hand the mic over now to our analyst in the studio, Barrister Adeyemi Ibirunke, to get his thoughts on all the headline stories captured this morning. Barrister, we have a couple of stories concerning your profession, the legal profession in Nigeria.
Yes, well, there's a very simple reason why there are many stories regarding the NBA in the papers this morning. Now, listeners may recall a couple of months ago when there was this drama after the suspension of democracy, essentially in Rivers State, where there was a drama about the NBA moving the annual convention from Rivers State to Enugu State. And the story or allegation about the exchange of certain amounts of money running into several hundred millions in naira to the NBA by the Rivers State government for regarding the convention. So it's that convention that's going on right now in Enugu State, and that's why there seems to be a couple of stories showing
Reflecting
headlining the NBA, which is the Nigerian Bar Association of Lawyers in Nigeria. But jumping into key stories in the papers this morning, of course, there's the story out of Osun State where I'd like to start from, and it's the story with regards to a young man that's been arrested because his girlfriend died in his apartment or while visiting him. Now, reading that story, it just shows how we unwittingly create unsavory situations for ourselves in this country. Now, the storyline is quite simple. The girlfriend was visiting the boyfriend and she had a medical emergency while in the house. The young man rendered age according to the report, was rushing her to a hospital when she eventually died. Yet, the police has confirmed the arrest of the young man in question. Now, should the boyfriend in this case be questioned? Absolutely. Should detailed investigation be conducted with regards to the boyfriend? Yes, that is also true. But I don't think that an arrest is appropriate in this circumstance because, uh, uh, especially in the circumstance of this case, you know, because arrest should only happen after investigations are concluded and there is what we call probable cause evidence to suggest that the individual in question or the person arrested has a hand in the death of the victim. But that's on the surface does not seem to be the case in this story. So what I worry about when we hear such stories is the fact that should it, God forbid, happen in a different to different people, you now see a scenario where the parties in question are much more focused or concerned about tampering with or hiding evidence as opposed to rendering aid. And that the priority should be rendering aid in such emergencies, so trying to see if the person can be helped, whether the situation can be salvaged, as opposed to saying that, hey, it's going to be a one way. I'm going to be guilty as charged from the get go, even before investigations are conducted and arrested and going through all of these media embarrassment. So the police, the law enforcement in Nigeria, with all due respect, they are getting it wrong in that area, thinking that once these things happen, and that is the impression of the general public as well, that once these things happen, the first thing to do is to arrest the partner in question pending investigation, which is something that we often hear in these scenarios. I don't think arrests should be made pending investigations. Arrests should be made only after conclusion of investigations, and then you have seen evidence to say, okay, this person is criminally liable for or there's at least there's a chance, probable cause that the person is implicated in the crime before you can now go ahead and arrest with a view to charging the person to court for a known offense in law. So that story is important for me this morning, and I want to also put it out there for listeners to learn from it. Yes, it's a bad lesson that we seem to be drawing from it this morning, but hopefully let us know that the police are getting it wrong, and the proper thing is to render aid, and if it happens, yes, submit yourself to investigation, not to arrest off the bat. And of course, there's another story that caught my attention, which is with regards to residents of a particular area here in Lagos complaining. The word used in the paper is lamenting the wastes that is indiscriminately dumped in a strategic location within the community. Now, I'm wondering why the residents are lamenting, because apparently they created the waste. It's unlikely or highly improbable that people that are not domiciled within that environment would come and start dropping wastes at that major uh, uh, traffic junction in the area. So it has to be the residents that would have started putting things there for it to not become a major refuse dump. So why am I speaking on this particular story this morning? I want to remind us, especially the listeners, that we all have a role to play. Oftentimes we are quick to point a finger at governments and forget that we also are a part of this nation. We are a part of the society. So whatever is happening, even the behavior and attitude of our politicians, of our political leaders, is a reflection essentially of this society that they come from. They come from domestic home units, and we all belong to a domestic home unit, either as parents, or as children, or what have you. So when we say that, okay, there's this indiscriminate disposal of waste, then it shows that we as a people, before calling on the government to say, okay, you need to collect the waste, we also have to be responsible in disposing our waste. We need to, and it goes beyond just paying for the waste disposal companies to come and collect the waste, but there is a responsibility on our part that we need to take steps to ensure that our environment is kept clean, especially in this rainy season. Even though the rains this year has been quite erratic in Lagos, but we are still in traditional rainy season, and there's the likelihood of the rains washing this waste into the drainage system, clogging the drains, causing flooding, causing health risks to the people here in Lagos as well. So it's a cycle, that it's a chain that is unbroken, and it will continue to impact us one way or the other, irrespective of how we view or look at it. And then, of course, there's the story with regards to the pains in the manufacturing and the agricultural sectors of our economy, which I'm not surprised about the story this morning, because with regards to the manufacturing industry, consider the cost of producing basic goods and services, vis-a-vis the purchasing power of the average Nigerian, of the market, especially in the course of the past 12 months. Now, we are seeing a scenario where there has been an increase in petrol and diesel, there has been an increase in the tariff for power supply, there has been an increase in minimum wage, and there also seems to be some form of increase in taxation. People have, a lot of companies are having to pay multiple taxes until we'll see how these new tax laws may correct that. And that is what the burden that our manufacturing industries are having to contend with, especially in the past 12 months till date. And then you are now comparing that with a majority population of people that are just barely managing to get food to eat. So there's that disparity between the cost of producing goods and then the people having the capacity to purchase the goods that are eventually are produced. I think it was a couple of months ago as well that we saw in the papers. We reviewed the story about people now going back from buying toothbrushes and toothpaste to looking for chewing sticks,
Yeah.
and then the traditional alternatives to hygiene in this country. So that is where we found ourselves. And when it comes to agriculture, of course, the reason behind that is quite mundane. It's simple. It's evident. Insecurity due to the unchecked and provocative activities of killer headers, plus corruption. And when I mean corruption, I mean the abuse of office of illegal checkpoints along the road, which in my view is a logistical nightmare for people that are transporting food from the farms to the cities for sale. All of these are these elementary contributors to the issue or the challenges we are facing as far as our agricultural sector is concerned. So we have a lot to be fixed, most on the part of government, but even on our own part as individuals, as members of this society, we also have a role to play to make sure that some of these things happen. And talking about uh, uh, everybody having a role to play, of course, there's the story with regards to the high costs of healthcare in Nigeria. Now, there seems to be a lot to unpack from that particular story. The first things first is that as a nation, I think the majority of us expect miracles to happen, which is never how policies or governance work. Even the federal government is also guilty, of this failed logic, if I may put it that way, because in this particular scenario, the story is that the federal government has suspended tariffs, import duties, and what have you, for 2 years, only 2 years, with regards to medical things that relates to the medical line, with a view to crashing the price of medical products in Nigeria, medical and healthcare products, including syringes, whatever, what have you, and that is the rationale behind the suspension of the tariffs, and the goal is that it would crash pricing of those products. But we listeners may recall that the same thing happened when the government in Nigeria banned importation of rice and then invested trillions into local manufacturing of or local production of rice in Nigeria, because the federal government at that time also presumed or assumed that by doing so the price of rice would also drop. But we saw the opposite happen in the country, and the price of rice actually soared until till date. We've not seen a reversion back to the original pricing of the product. So it's that miracle mentality that we need to eschew from our minds in Nigeria, and come to the realization that a lot of these policies won't happen overnight, won't uh, uh, trigger the changes that we hope or the results that we want all of a sudden. It's going to take a substantial period of time. It's going to take a while. It's going to take consistency, and oftentimes it might be necessary to extend such policies beyond the 2 years that the government has already put for with regards to the medical and healthcare products in Nigeria. Now, the second thing that jumped out at me from that particular story is the fact that, and I've often said this on air, we isolate issues in Nigeria. We look at a particular issue and we want to deal with it in isolation. Okay, we have high cost of medical products in the country, so let us remove tariffs and then the price will come down. Whereas we seem to be forgetting the fact or ignoring the reality that the forex that is being used to purchase these products has increased significantly over time as a result of the unitary or the parallel exchange rate. So because of that, removing tariffs alone would not bring down the pricing of those pharmaceutical and healthcare products in the country. So it's let's take malaria for example. Malaria is a pretty commonplace in Nigeria. Now, personally, I've realized that the amount of money it's used to cost me to treat the entire family and get change is what I'll probably use to treat just one person today. Because, of course, the forex pricing has changed. The value of the naira to the dollar, and a lot of these things, of course, are being imported, which is why the government says let's remove the import duties, but they are purchased with dollars abroad. So it's expensive. Even if the product itself is not purchased abroad, the most of the product, the raw materials, some of the raw materials that we import for our pharmaceutical industries here may also have been sourced abroad. So all of these things also impact the pricing of the products in the market. So it's really expensive. And then the final, or maybe a third angle that we can briefly consider this morning, is the Nigerian factor. Now, what do I mean by the Nigerian factor? Now, when the federal government often makes these emergency policies, the system is gamed, and a few people often take advantage, of their unscrupulous access to the corridors of power to access some of these things. Now, again, I'll reference the rice ban. Now, when the Central Bank of Nigeria invested those trillions or billions into rice production, rice farming in Nigeria, they would have, the real farmers, I suspect, may not have had access to those funds, whereas some people that are close to the corridors of power that had access, political access, would have gotten those funds more, whereas they may not have been farmers. So they would have gotten the money, diverted it, done whatever they want to do, and we saw the consequences, we saw the repercussions, because at the end of the day, the price of rice in Nigeria escalated till date. It has never gone back down to what it used to be before the ban was put in place. So that is the way the Nigerian factor plays its own role. And until we fix that, and again, that is where the fact that everybody has a role to play, not just the government. We as the people also have a role to play. Excuse me. We have something to contribute to ensuring that some of these things that government tries to achieve also work. If I'm not into pharmaceutical importation of pharmaceutical products, for example, then because of an opportunity, I shouldn't overnight pretend to be in the sector, in the industry, and then leverage that access for personal benefits. No, that's not the way it works, because in the long term, the majority of the people will still have to pay for it, like we saw in the rice production industry. So we have to fix a lot in this country, and as much as the government is trying to play their part, we as citizens must also do whatever is necessary to ensure that we play our role, we are honest, we think in the big picture and in the long term for the benefit of the majority. We cannot satisfy or make everybody happy, but let us always try to think in terms of the majority. And then there's this story that I think is also very important for me to speak on this morning, and it's with regards to the huge amount of money, humongous amount of money running into millions in dollars that has been said to be undeclared funds that has been confiscated at airports. Now, let me be clear this morning that not declaring the fund by itself does not constitute a crime, or under declaring the or having substantial amounts of cash over 10,000 US dollars in your possession does not by itself constitute a crime. It is now, it's only a presumption for the law enforcement because of cross-border criminal financing, terrorism, and what have you, that those policies or laws were put in place to say, okay, when you see this kind of cash that you become suspicious about, then it behoves on the person in possession of those monies to now justify it. So if I can justify the fact that I'm carrying several $100,000 in my possession in cash, then there should be no basis for it being confiscated or me leaving that money behind. And I've seen scenarios. There was one we did a couple of weeks ago where the individual was actually even charged to court. And I think I used the example of Alhaji Dangote in the past. Now he is, of course, a Forbes billionaire, Africa's richest man, to the glory of God. But if he has, for someone like in that position, 20,000 US dollars may be pocket change for him. So if he has that amount of money in his custody, it's unlikely that he will be unable to justify carrying such cash. So therefore, the action itself, the act itself of carrying the amount of money does not constitute a crime. So I want listeners to get that very, very correctly, as opposed to what is being projected that once you have that amount of money in your custody, you may have committed a crime.
Okay, all right. Barrister Adeyemi Birunke there telling us what he thinks about all those stories. It's time for us to read your messages. So we have messages on all the platforms, Facebook, WhatsApp, and the SMS portal. This one reads and says, "Good morning, Metro crew. I support Metro, the Best Community Report Award on the 29th. Metro shouted Ojuri Ota for a bridge to be erected last year. Since 2021, Koboko Man was complaining. What is Dele Alaki doing in Japan, begging them to come and mine our resources? Don't we have geologists and miners? Have you seen why Koboko Man is angry? I cry." Okay, Koboko Man. This one reads and says, "Good morning to all of us, especially you guys in the studio. Metro 97.7 FM. How you doing? How's the weekend? The real problem and also the solution for Nigeria. Good morning, Metro crew. The federal government should please drop the idea of school feeding program and channel for the renovation of schools and give free education to our pupils. School feeding program is an avenue for politicians to loot our treasury, as it happened during former President Buhari's time. It will not work under President Tinubu as well. Okay, Benjamin Shugule, that's your message. And this one says, good morning, Fem Ahmed, Tosi, Honorable Barrister Adeyemi Birodama. African future depends on Nigeria. Yes, that fair is equivalent of private hospitals in South Africa, based on xenophobia. On Chief Obasanjo, GCFR, former President Donald Trump gaslights Nigeria's judiciary and APC and PS political movement terrorist. The judiciary is now common Nigerian. The blind maiden is now the Greek god, Janus. The judiciary is now common Nigerian. The blind maiden is now the Greek god, Janus, that has 4 eyes and can see justice, hence bribery. That has 4 eyes and can see justice, hence bribery. Please stay tuned.
And
Sorry, ma. Is it fixed? It's not fixed.
It's 650.
No, broadcast. FT. It's fixed. FT. Why is it FT?
Wait. You see the writing 60 there, and then it says 650, and I say that is FT.
Why is it FT?
Because it's 650. Why have 650?
Madam,
ICT and professional, so you graduate with an edge. Solution, affordable, care plans, flexible, your future limitless. Apply today at www.eduniversity.edu.ng or call our university. Truth conquers all things.
all right, glad to know the current economic hardship, hunger, and poverty in the country is unacceptable and uncalled for. Our political leaders should consider the overwhelming interest of Nigerians rather than their own personal aggrandizement. Thank God. Thanks and God bless you. Jonathan Onya says, Kemi Badnock, you will lament tire and help will not come. Help will not come your way for your real country, Nigeria, that could have helped you now. You have disrespected and demarketed. So carry your cross alone, I beg. All right, Jonathan Onya, that's your message. Well, looks like we've read all the messages we have on all the platforms, so we have to go. Okay, this one says, good morning, Ahmed Barrister Adeyemi Birunke, Senator Remi Tinubu empowers people with various items of legal gesture and similar others done in the past, running into billions are commendable. However, knowing full well that the office of the First Lady is not statutory, the question needs to be asked as to the source of the funding of what's normally referred to as a pet project of the wife of President Mbu Funsha for coming to the show this
You're
morning.
most welcome. Thanks for having me.
And to you, thanks for listening. You're talking. Okay. So when you see live, you again. This is my producer. See yourself. See body yourself.
I can see myself.
Stop doing like that. It's not good.